All right, P3ers, here we go again. Another of our classroom YouTube productions, if you will. Low-level production, don't get me wrong. It's definitely not special. But it's on YouTube nonetheless. How do you like that? All right, little different approach this time around. A little different approach. We've reached that point in the year where students from both of my classes, we got two P3 classes out there, and this applies to U.S. history as well, if any of them are tuning in. But we reached that point of the year where students are starting to ask me, what's your philosophy on this? What's your philosophy on that? And my answer is always, who cares? I'm not telling you. Which is the way I prefer it to be. I just put my energy into whatever I'm teaching and try to make that seem like the most important philosophy you've ever heard in your life. Until the next thing I teach, then that's the most important philosophy you ever heard in your life. So clearly, I try to keep things pretty balanced, which then leads to that question once again. What's your philosophy on things? And while I'm not going to tell you, I thought I'd give you just maybe today a little bit of a hint, if you will, for you to try to, if it's important to you, you can try to figure it out. Hey, if that's something that interests you and you want to kind of put together the pieces, hey, go ahead. Who am I to stop you? Excuse me. But very important, like in terms of that question, if you're one of the people who asked that question or are curious about it, pay attention to not just what I teach, but what's said in class. You really got to lock in a little bit to try to get to the root of that question. The reason for that is because I created the P3 class. The curriculum is ever changing depending on the way I'm approaching the course, but it's all driven by me and what I'm presenting to you, what I'm bringing to you. So let me just bring up two things for you here. Number one, during our unit on human nature, I used Carl Jung and archetypal thinking as one of the theories of human nature. Just listen to this. You read this if you did your homework. Carol Pearson, in her pamphlet, archetypes are psychological structures reflected in symbols, images, art, and themes common to all cultures and all time. You see them in recurring images in art, literature, myths, and dreams. You may experience archetypes directly as different parts of you. If you say that on one hand you want one thing, on the other hand you want something else, you may give archetypal names to those parts as they generally communicate desires and motivations common to all people at all times. Well, that's a heck of a thing, really. I know it was a little bit long what I just read to you, but in the end, it's talking about this sense of unity, this sense of a vision of human nature that says this is at the core of it all. And it's a unifying theory, meaning, once again, the art from different cultures and different time periods might look different, but that which motivates them from within people is recognizable. The themes and the stories that we tell, the way the hero's journey unfolds that way in multiple cultures, probably all culture, hitting those key elements. What is that? And to archetypes, there's this energy deep within us that comes out in our stories. And as someone who's written a couple of fiction books, I always get a little fascinated, of course, by anything that may be able to inform my own writing. So you have archetypes that I choose to teach you. I choose to teach you positive psychology. And there's all types of reasons for positive psychology to be taught, I would contend. Number one, it's a little bit, even though it sounds, quote, soft, positive psychology, it's actually started as a bit of a rebellion against typical psychological thinking that was very pathological and very disease-oriented. And so the reaction to that generated positive psychology. So there's actually a little bit of rebellion in there. I don't know if you picked up on that when I taught it, but it's there. Also, positive psychology was tested around the world. Remember, the researchers went on, a research vacation. Must be a nice write-off. a research vacation where they interviewed people from all over the globe, from very different cultures, including some indigenous tribes people. And in the course of those interviews, the same values kept being brought up, particularly when you got people talking about what values do you want your children to have. And those same values kept showing up. So once again, maybe there's a unifying aspect to positive psychology that makes it a lens worthy of looking at the world through. Having said that, it doesn't mean you have to agree with anything I'm teaching either. Remember, I'm teaching you, I'm presenting a history of ideas to you. I'm not saying these are all the ideas you need to put in your backpack and carry with you the rest of your life. Just as simple, for example, when we watched the founder of positive psychology speaking on that TED Talk, he mentioned 3 great arenas of life. I disagree with him. I think there's 5 great arenas of life. And I know some of you are thinking, what are they, Dr. Rourke? I'm not telling. Not telling. Figure it out. But I think there's 5 great arenas in life, not 3. So there's an area of pulling away from the founder of positive psychology, which you have every right to do. The founder of positive psychology pulled away from basically the entire psychological field. So I think he would approve, at least in terms of that drive to go, what's my take on this? So pay attention to what's taught, the way it's taught, and maybe ask yourself, why would he choose that to teach us? And that might help those of you who are curious about my philosophy on things, which is fine. And it's okay to be curious about that. I mean, why not? It's a philosophy class. We're supposed to think and be curious. So by all means, don't hold yourself back in that regard. There is something though about, now I'm talking about the teaching and the approach. And I can't help but wonder, because we live in times where my teacher colleagues are struggling a little bit, increasing in of teacher burnout, teacher fatigue, and all these type of things. And I do wonder sometimes if philosophy can be of service to people in any field of endeavor. By that I mean this. A lot of times when people in our profession, teachers, for example, just follow along, are feeling stressed, are feeling overworked, overwhelmed, the response tends to be, oh, here's some time-saving tips. Here's a way to make your homework assignments, whatever, more manageable. And that's great. And that's great. I mean, I've been doing it for 30 years. I could pass on advice from a teacher, mentor of mine, Nancy Mack, who advised me once, hey, take a look at your homework. And if you're not talking about it in class at some point, why are you giving it? If it's homework just to collect and never mention again, why are you doing that? You know, be more thoughtful with your homework. And I went, oh, geez, that's a good idea. Another teacher mentor of mine, Bruce Bierman, tended to ask the question, why are you teaching that specific thing? Why are you teaching? Bruce was a very specific man. And boom, every single question on a homework. Why are you asking that question? Is that question worded well? And so I had some great conversations with Dr. Bierman about such things. Actually, my P3 classes see examples of Dr. Bierman all the time. We just gave a homework assignment. I had told you there were 10 questions on the homework assignment. I cut it down to 5 that I put on our Google Classroom, but then I handed you 7. And the reason you got 7 is because I went from 10 to 7, then I looked at the 7 some more, and you know what? I can get rid of that question, and I cut it down to 5, and then the 5th question I actually cut in half and got rid of half the question anyway. So like Bruce Bierman was in my head. Why are you teaching that? Why would you say this? Do they really need this? Are you going to talk about it in class, says Nancy Mack. And so, so that's all great stuff. That's all great stuff, but it doesn't really solve the problem, I think, of being overwhelmed or pained by something in life or your profession, like we're talking about teaching right now. I think there's something else you need to bring to the table in life, in your job, that is so important. I mentioned Jacob Needleman in class. We talked about Jacob Needleman in terms of his idea that freedom of speech is designed to create community conscience. Something else Dr. Needleman once said was, or wrote, I didn't hear him say it, he wrote it. Something that Dr. Needleman wrote was, how did he put it? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on Dr. Needleman. How disrespectful of me. That's why I should take notes. I didn't put the notes down. Dr. Needleman talks about something called an aching question. The idea of a question that just digs at you and digs at you, and you want to find the answer, and you want to find the answer. And it can be very fulfilling. And like for me personally, I read an essay, my goodness, years ago, 20 some odd years ago, written by a fellow named Steve Biko, who was battling apartheid in South Africa. Steve Biko wrote an essay entitled Black Consciousness and the Quest for a True Humanity. Black Consciousness was the group he was a part of, and True Humanity is what he felt they were seeking through Black consciousness. And it's a wonderful essay. It definitely is focused on the challenges and the pain of apartheid and the segregation of South Africa. But that idea that there could be something called a true humanity was absolutely captivating to me. And what if we actually could find it? And what if in finding that true humanity, people, institutions were elevated? To me, that's an incredibly worthy question. That's an aching question. Can I figure out a true humanity? And how do you present true humanity in such a way that can actually be useful and not just sound like some type of weird philosophic concept? And I take you on that quest with me on a regular basis. It's infused in my teaching. Not every day. You got the nuts and bolts of teaching that you got to do. But there are lessons, and it's in U.S. history, and it's in philosophy, it's in psychology, it's when I'm talking in the hallway, it's when I'm talking at dinner. There's always times when that idea of the true humanity and how do you find it, how do you present it, what does that quest look like? It just fires me up, and I bring that to the class. I'm not at class to teach you historic numbers. I'm not in class to teach you historic facts. That's going to happen, but that's not what drives me. What drives me is that idea of the quest for a true humanity. That's an aching question that I'm trying to figure out, and I've been trying to figure it out with students for years and years. I don't have that many years left in the classroom, but it keeps me enthused. It keeps me working. It keeps me reading new information. It keeps me bringing new assignments to you. And I like to think it keeps a certain level of intellectual excitement in the classroom, and maybe some off-key humor from time to time as well. So we do have this idea of something that drives you. And if I'm talking to some of my teacher colleagues, if you're one of the 36 people who watched this video, collecting data and cutting down a homework assignment from 10 questions to 5, that's not going to infuse you with purpose. There's got to be something else. But if you can find that aching question, that thing that drives you, it can make your days a little bit better. And I know teaching's hard right now, and I know a lot of people are struggling with their enthusiasm, with their energy level. I mean, I'm not saying I'm immune. I feel it too. But I can always go back and be replenished by that idea that in that classroom, there's something else going on. And it's so much bigger than me and the students. But we get to walk there together, even when they don't realize necessarily what I'm presenting to them. All right. Now, if you're a student and you're still listening, you might think, oh, Dr. Rourke's philosophy is the true humanity. Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything to you. So actually, I didn't help you that much, because what does it mean? What is the true humanity? What are the aspects of it? So if you thought that was an answer in some way to something, it wasn't. It was not. But it might have been a road sign. And a road sign's not a terrible thing to follow. Speaking of things that aren't terrible to follow, before we go, let me share with you the mug I chose for today. I think I chose it for a particular reason. I don't know if you can see the words, but it says here, one generation plants the trees, another gets the shade. And the mug is claiming that's a Chinese proverb. I didn't check my sources. I have no idea if that's an actual Chinese proverb. It sounds good. Sounds nice. But I didn't check my sources. But the idea is a great one. One generation plants the trees, another gets the shade. My goodness, maybe that's part of my philosophy as well. Or maybe I'm just trying to trick you to look in the wrong direction. You got to figure it out. Well, anyway, that'll do for today. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you in the classroom. Take care, everybody. Bye.